There are a lot of Carolina Panthers fans right now that aren't really happy with the current state of the franchise. Now, going into the year, many Panthers fans had high expectations. They had this team somewhere between 9 and 11 wins. There were many Panthers fans out there who believed that the Panthers had a team that was capable of making it to the playoffs, and they came really short of those expectations. They went 5 and 12. And you probably could say this team regressed because year one under Matt Rhule in 2020, this team was way more competitive than what they were this past season. Like in 2020, I believe they were in like 7 or 8 one-possession games. And if the ball would have bounced in a different direction in their favor, they probably could have ended up winning 7 games in 2020. So you look at the fact that they started out 3-0. You got Stephon Gilmore. You traded for CJ Henderson. Like, the Panthers defense is really talented. However, the offense was awful. So what does Matt Rhule do? He fires Joe Brady, which Joe Brady kind of wasn't a great hire because he got too much credit for the success that the LSU offense had because he didn't even call the plays at LSU. He was just, a little bit of an architect per se when it came to designing passing routes and whatnot. So he wasn't really ideal OC material. But at the same time, you also could probably say that he got the wrong end of the foot and he was pretty much used as a scapegoat for Matt Rhule to keep his job. So Matt Rhule surprisingly comes back for a third year. And I say surprisingly because a lot of Panthers fans seem to be really surprised that he is returning for a third year. But you got to remember that the Panthers owner gave Matt Rhule a 7-year contract. And there was a report coming out that he is embarrassed that he gave Matt Rhule such a long-term contract because of how the team performed this year. But I think that bringing back Matt Rhule isn't really a mistake. I don't think it's bad because, I had Carolina winning between 6 and 9 games this year. Carolina was not a playoff football team. I don't know why Panthers fans believe that going into the year. I understand why you had a very good young defense. You got Brian Burns, Jeremy Chin. Okay, Hassan Reddick had a really fantastic year. Your defense is probably one of the most talented defenses in the league. But you look at the offensive line, you had questions at quarterback. We thought Sam Darnold was going to be the answer. He wasn't. Then you bring in Cam Newton. He kind of fizzled out after the Arizona game when they made him the starter. You got PJ Walker in there. The quarterback position, the offensive line position for Carolina is a mess. So how is this going to get improved? Well, first, you have to bring in the right guy at offensive coordinator. Now, many Panthers fans want Pep Hamilton. But there are a lot of teams who want Pep Hamilton. Hell, I'm a Steelers fan, and I pray to God that Mike Tomlin brings in Pep Hamilton because he'll be a big upgrade from Matt Canada. So when you look at Matt Rhule is known as a team builder. He has the label of the coach who comes in. He's not an X's and O's guy. His specialty is building a team up from bottom feeder to contender, which means establishing a good culture in the locker room and establishing a culture that players want to play for you. And we don't really know if he's done a good job of that because you normally would like to see your team perform better instead of regressing. And Carolina definitely regressed this past season because a lot of their games weren't even close. And compared to their 2020 season, although they didn't have the greatest record, they were in a lot of games. Carolina didn't get blown out often year one under Matt Rhule. Year two, oh my goodness. After that 3-0 start, everything just went to the fan. So Matt Rhule come back for a third year, like I expected it. I don't think there's nothing wrong with it because he is a team builder. Like, you have to give guys a little bit of time to build up a franchise when they have that team builder label. I wasn't expecting Carolina to just have this big turnaround in year two and make it to the playoffs. Like, Carolina was a little bit of a disappointment. I didn't expect them to be that bad, but they are a couple of pieces away from making it to the playoffs. So you got to improve the offensive line. You definitely have to find the answer at quarterback, rather that be via the draft or via free agency. But you have to get that figured out. So I still do have confidence in Matt Rhule. Believe it or not, I'm not a Matt Rhule fan or anything like that. I'm not a Matt Rhule fan page. I just think that you have to give coaches who have this team builder label, you have to at least give them 3 to 4 years. So going into year 3 for Matt Rhule, Panthers fans, your expectations definitely should be playoffs. And if the Panthers don't make it to the playoffs, then that's where, you can come out and say, oh yeah, he needs to be gone. But year 2 playoffs for Carolina, I couldn't really see it. I had them as a fringe playoff contender, a team that could compete for a playoff spot, but ideally they were missing a couple of pieces this year. Like, the offensive line was a mess, and the offensive line didn't help out the quarterback position at all. So that has to get figured out. But with Matt Rhule having the team builder label, you have to give him time. Like, guys who have this team builder label, they don't turn things around in 2 years. It normally takes them at least 3 years to get things rolling in the right direction. So this season, 2022, should be the year that the Carolina Panthers are contending for the playoffs. And on top of that, they probably could win the division, because when you look at the state of the NFC South, I mean, there are a lot of question marks. Like, what's going to happen with Matt Ryan? Is he going to stay the quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons? What about New Orleans? Are they going to bring back Jameis Winston? Is Jameis Winston going to sign elsewhere? Like, Tampa Bay, is Tom Brady going to be back? Is Bruce Arians going to be back? Like, there are a lot of questions right now. And for the NFC South, it's definitely a division that if Carolina can, nail their offensive coordinator hiring and, nail free agency and the draft, find a quarterback, improve the offensive line, this is definitely a team that is not only going to be in the playoffs, but they could be a dark horse Super Bowl contender if things go the right way. Now, I feel like Matt Rhule lost the locker room simply for the fact that the team wasn't really all that great. And when you're not having success, it's easy to lose a locker room. And there's nothing wrong with losing a locker room as long as you lose the locker room for the right reasons. So if you're a Panthers fan, ask yourself this. Do you feel like Matt Rhule lost the locker room for the right reasons? Because every coach at one point of their career, unless you're Bill Belichick or Mike Tomlin, you just have a consistent amount of success every year when you're a consistent contender and you're consistently winning games. But if you have a coach that has a down year, of course you're going to end up losing the locker room, because, you're going to have guys who get to the end of the year and they're like, F it, man. Like, I just want to get this shit over with. So for Matt Rhule, 2022 is definitely going to be a make or break year. If Carolina makes it to the playoffs, hooray, Matt Rhule's the guy. If Carolina doesn't make it to the playoffs, then that's where you have to start getting your pitchforks out. But I kind of feel like it was a little bit premature of a lot of people out there to expect Carolina to make it to the playoffs in year 2 under Matt Rhule, when you look at the uncertainty that they had at the quarterback position, and you look at how it was a lot of uncertainty when it came to the offensive line. So I'm eager to see what Matt Rhule does moving forward, how he improves his staff, who he hires as his offensive coordinator, because I definitely do believe in Matt Rhule. I believe in every coach. I give every coach a fair shot to prove themselves. So if you're a Panthers fan watching this, Let me know what you guys think about Matt Rhule. What are your expectations for Matt Rhule going into 2022? Do you still believe in Matt Rhule, or are you still somebody who still believes that Carolina should have went ahead and moved in a different direction? Let me know if you are watching this on YouTube down in the comment section below, and make sure that you check out the JT Sports Podcast, which is available on all podcasting platforms. All you have to do is type in the JT Sports Podcast and it should pop up.